Good evening. My name is Dave Frank, and welcome to my 22nd Internet Masterclass. I'm coming to you live on YouTube from Harry, NYC, in the middle of New York City. Tonight, I'm thrilled to begin what I intend to be a series of 4 masterclasses on the all-time greats of modern jazz piano: Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, and McCoy Tyner. We'll be analyzing some of their music and look into how these geniuses have used advanced musical concepts to redefine the direction of jazz piano in the last 50 years. Behind all great music are concepts being used by the piano gods that guide and shape their improvisations and compositions. It's my hope that by looking into these underlying concepts and approaches, we can gain a greater appreciation and understanding of their music, which will both help us to dig listening to their music and give us a plethora of concepts to use in our own creative music making. This is an advanced class, so take your time to study and assimilate the concepts a bit at a time. I recommend that you download the notes to this class on my website, www.davefrankjazz.com. Read along with me if you will. Armando Anthony Chick Corea, born 1941, is one of the great pillars in the building of modern jazz piano. His 50-plus year musical career has been characterized by his mastery of every nuance of jazz and jazz piano, his joyful attitude of exploration and creativity that he brings to his seemingly endless string of remarkable performances and projects, an original and precise piano technique capable of an astonishing range of musical colors, and a total mastery of the art of performing and communicating through music. Chick's huge contribution to modern music includes original compositions that have become jazz standards, string quartets, work for electric and acoustic ensembles, children's songs, and much, much more. As an ambassador of jazz of worldwide stature, Chick Corea has been challenging, delighting, and astonishing us for 5 decades. Chick is front and center in the pantheon of the all-time great figures in jazz and is still burning today. I've had the great fortune to sit in front of Chick at many of his performances over the years, and the exact sensation you get is one of witnessing divine grace in action, totally flowing and played with utmost nuance and accuracy. Let's switch to the piano view now, and I'll show you some of the concepts that I've been able to gather from this beautiful performance. The way Chick starts out this improvisation is using a very interesting technique called 10 drummers. In this technique, he's thinking of the piano as a drum and the fingers as 10 little drummers. The piano, of course, is both a string and a percussive instrument. In this technique of 10 drummers, Chick is emphasizing the percussive aspect of the piano. The way that you do this is you think of rhythmic groupings and keep the 2 hands close. Most of the time in jazz piano, you'll have a left hand doing something maybe here, and a right hand doing something up here as 2 separate movements. In the 10 drummer type of movement, the 2 hands go together to make one flow. Let's use a 2 and a 3 as a basic idea of what this 10 drummers looks like. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And you can start practicing it slow, and then you can move it. So on and so on. You can also do a rhythm of 2 and 2. This gives a very chaotic kind of a sound, very restless and unsettled. And you can move it around the keyboard. Chick's better at that than I am. Let's try a different rhythm of 4 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And sometimes he'll use a rhythm of 3 and 3. He begins this improvisation up till about 25 seconds using various forms of these 10 drummers. In other parts of the improv, he also uses the percussive aspect of playing by playing one note multiple times with different fingers. A good fingering to do this with is, for example, 4, 3, 2, 1 in the 4, 3, 2 in the right hand, and 2 in the left hand. And you can get a very percussive drum-like sound that way. So he could play a line, and it creates a really interesting texture that's different than just playing a moving line. That's 10 drummers. Let's try it one more time, see if I can do it a little better. All right, that's Chick's invention. As we mentioned before, most of this improvisation is Chick going in and out of an E modal tonality. When he hits the modal tonality, it feels like you're home. It's very kind of calm, and you feel settled, as opposed to the 10 drummers where you feel very chaotic. And it'll always bring you back home to that E tonal center. Now, when he hits the E tonal center, he uses often what we call modal clusters to create a very interesting kind of a sound within that modal center. Here are some examples of some of Chick's modal clusters. There are 2 or 3 notes. G-A would be one. F-sharp G-B might be another one. F-sharp G-A might be another one. Or B-E-F-sharp can be another one. And there are others. But Chick goes out of the modal tonality. And then when he brings you back to it, sometimes he'll use these really nice clusters to get this kind of still a little bit of tense sound, even though you're feeling at home. Beautiful concept, modal clusters. You can experiment with different intervals, different number of notes, but it's a beautiful way to come back to a center after you've been someplace different. The next concept is a very important concept for modern music, and it's called cycled harmonies. In traditional jazz, traditional pop music, the movement of the roots goes in fourths. 2, 5, 1 generally. So you have a D minor going to a G7, up a fourth, and then going up to a C major 7, up a fourth. It's the movement of the roots that we're looking for. Traditional harmony generally goes up by fourths. What Chick and the other modern masters figured out was that it's possible to move the roots in other intervals besides fourths. So Chick uses a lot of times a third or a second, some form of what we call a cycle 3 or a cycle 2. A cycle 2 would be moving the roots up in whole steps or half steps. Here's a cycle 2 with whole steps. So you'll move chords with these roots. All of music is just going from one place to another. So traditionally we hear this, going to this, going to this. But that's just a traditional kind of conditioned response that we have to music. If you use cycled harmony, we can get a sound like this. That's cycle 2 by using the movement of roots in a major second, and we're using the same structure, a major 7th chord in that instance. One way to start to get a feeling for how to use cycles in your own music is to take the same chord, in this case it's a major 7, we could try a minor 7, and now we're going to move it up minor thirds. And this can actually be the chord progression to a tune. You can create something like this with a melody. Let's give it a try here with the major 7s. That's kind of how you use this cycled harmony. Now, Chick uses this in a lot of different places in the improv we just heard. I'll show you a couple of them right now. One is he uses intervals and clusters at 37 seconds into the improv. So take a listen to this. Okay, so what he's doing here is he's taking intervals, he's moving the root of the interval up a third, now down a second, up a third, down a second, he adds a little cluster here, down a second, down a third, down a second, and then he takes us back home to E modal center. Boom, do, do, dee, do, 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 do. It's just a way to go away from that E tonal center, modal center, and then to go back to it. Using these cycled intervals. Very interesting. A little bit later, at 5:44 in the improv, he does the same type of thing with triads. Left hand, you'll hear the left hand kind of staying more or less static between either an octave or a broken octave or a fifth or a broken fifth. So here's cycled triads at 5:44 in the improv. Okay, I'll play that again. Watch, E flat, which is an interesting place to start in E, but he creates that tension that he's going to resolve later. He does an inversion, down a cycle 2, minor second, an inversion, down a cycle 2 with an inversion of a triad, inverts the triad again, up a cycle 2, up a cycle 3, down a cycle 2, an inversion, up a cycle 3, up a cycle, down a cycle 2, all cycle 2's there, and then he brings you back to home base. Okay, let's try it one more time. That's the use of cyclic harmony, and we hear a lot of that in modern music. So as we've been saying, this improvisation is basically going away from an E modal center and then going back to it. Sometimes when we go back to a nice settled sensation of being in that E modal center, Chick gives us what I might call a modal anthem. A modal anthem is a real strong melody that centers us in that modal center. At 46 seconds, it sounds something like this. What makes for a good melody or a good anthem is a combination of steps and leaps and a kind of a nice snaky motion of the line where you're going both up and down. There we have a leap. We have some leaps here, and steps and leaps. It sounds like a complete musical idea, and it's very clearly in an E Dorian scale, which is a D scale starting and ending on E. Here's another modal anthem that's heard at 125. Say that again. We're very strongly in that E tonal center there. It's a beautiful way to sit and enjoy that sound at rest. Now we're going to look at a concept that I call a harmonic moniker. A harmonic moniker is a sound that repeats. It's a general kind of a sequence that repeats a number of times during the improvisation. It kind of defines the improvisation in a certain kind of a way. In this case, he's taking us away from the E modal center, and starting us in C. And then he moves it up, cycle 2 a half step, the same exact chord. And then he goes up to E flat, cycle 2. And he resolves us back to the E modal center with a cluster. You'll hear this one a lot of times in the improvisation. It's beautiful. That takes us away from the center and brings us back. A lot of times he'll improvise a line and then use this harmonic moniker to bring us back to that settled place. See how settled it feels? It's really beautiful. That's what we call a harmonic moniker. You can look that one up in Wikipedia. The next thing brings us at about 58 seconds into the improv is an ostinato. An ostinato is another kind of a figure that gives you a restless, kind of agitated feel. That's a great balance to the restful feel of the harmonic moniker and the modal themes. So in this case, the ostinato could be E, A, B. And you just repeat that very fast. And sometimes Chick will do a double ostinato. Or he can improvise over it. Okay, and you get that restless, agitated feeling. And then he's going to bring us back to that restful feeling of the E modal center. At 2 minutes and 5 seconds into the improv, we go into a different modal center, and it's significant that it's a half step below where we've been the whole time. So most of the whole improv has been in the E modal center, and now for a while he takes us into E flat minor pentatonic. And the E flat minor pentatonic scale will be like that. E flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, D flat, E flat. And he does a certain kind of figure that's bigger or wider as you go on. In piano arrangements, two things that tend to happen is that the arrangement gets faster, the notes get faster, and the notes get wider. You use more of the keyboard. That's a typical technique for arranging something for a keyboard. So in this case, he's using a big figure with this E minor pentatonic like this. He uses octaves in the left hand and a kind of a fourths figure in the right hand. It's a little more complicated than that, but you get the idea. So this takes us to a whole new place. And then he resolves it back home to the E modal center. One more time. Back to the E modal center. That's a great movement, and he uses that also in his lines. He'll shift from like an E center to an E flat center and then back. At 3:20 in the improv, we have a different rhythmic feel, which is like a Latin feel, which of course Chick is famous for, and he's great at that. So the way he achieves that Latin feel is with staccato left hand going between an E, 1-5-1, and a flat 6, C, G, C. It's more staccato. That's how he gets that kind of Latin feel. Again, it's a great balance between this kind of relaxed, almost rubato kind of a harmonic moniker, and then all of a sudden we're in Latinville. Yeah. Now we'll come to an important concept in modern music, which we call modal interchange. Modal interchange is when you use a mode that starts and ends on the same note. In this case, it will be E because that's the basic key of the piece. But the mode itself you're playing is made up of different intervals and has a different sound. And you can switch between many different modes like this very quickly and get an improvisation that changes character very quickly. And it's a great sound. So you could say in this particular case that the basic kind of mode Chick is using here is a Dorian, E Dorian. He comes to there occasionally back and forth to give you a very settled sound. But here's another scale he'll use. He'll take you back to the E modal center, but he'll use a scale like this. I would call that a Hasidic Dorian. See how much more tense that is than the basic Dorian. He'll improvise on that for a while. And then he'll bring us back to the Dorian. Tension, release. You can use that with modal interchange to great benefit. Another scale that Chick uses in part is the whole tone scale. You can see how much more tense this one is. So you can improvise a little bit with this scale. And then you'll resolve it back home. You can make up scales that use any combination of intervals, and I know Chick does this, which is very effective. You can make up your own scales, and as long as you're starting it on E and ending it on E, you can come up with all kinds of interesting sounds and ways to make melodies in non-traditional ways. That's modal interchange. Yes, it is. Our last concept is perhaps the most interesting concept that Chick is using in this amazing improvisation. This concept is how to improvise lines going in and out of modes. In one improvised line, Chick could be going in and out of 3 or 4 different modes or patterns, and it creates a really nutty sound that's absolutely fascinating and interesting. I'll play this line that occurs at 2:33 real slow. That's what you call a nutty line. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on with this line. It starts in E modal, and then goes immediately into F modal for 2 notes, and then back to E modal. And now he gives us a chromatic pattern 3 times. So that one line starts in E modal, F modal, E modal, chromatic, and ends back in the E home. The next line is also interesting. Here he's giving us a phrase again in E modal, but it ends on a flat 5, which is an interesting way to end a phrase. That's really cool. You feel that tension at the end. And now he's going back into kind of an E modal and has a half step in there. All that's E modal, and then he goes into a half step lower, E flat modal. Back to E. Can you dig that? Yeah. Thank you, Chick Corea. What a line. How are we doing out there? Any of this making sense? I find it great fun to work and try to figure out what the great masters are doing in modern music. There's so much there to study and to learn. And somebody like Chick is like watching Einstein actually creating his E equals MC squared. It's amazing what he's able to do. Some of the organizational concepts that Chick is using here might include to repeat small sections multiple times to breed familiarity with something essentially new. So he'll take this harmonic moniker thing and he'll play it a number of times, or he'll take the drummers and he'll repeat that a number of times. And that repetition will breed familiarity to the ear. And basically the idea of how you combine these things is a human emotional experience. So it's great to start in some place that feels like home, and then you're going away from that place that feels like home. There's more tension, you're out in the world, let's say, and then you come back to home again. It's very satisfying to do that, and Chick's doing it using all these modern elements. Shifting harmonic systems is also very interesting and very helpful to developing a whole improvisation. In this one, Chick is going between atonal, modal, and cyclic harmonies. Using different rhythmic feels, in this case rubato, swing, and Latin, also helps to change the mood and keep the piece interesting, keep everybody on their toes. As the arrangement continues, oftentimes you get wider and you get faster. So in the beginning, Chick might do a moniker like this, and then he might do the same thing bigger later. That's one hallmark of the development of a keyboard piece. One of the basic things is he's going from calm feeling to a frenetic feeling. When you change one concept, you can change another. So if you're doing a calm feel, you might use. When you're doing a frenetic feel, he might change the bass line. Changing those feels is also very helpful to develop a complete improvisation. The last thing I want to mention is a very interesting pianistic technique of going from what we call a wet sound to a dry sound. A wet sound is a sound that has lots of sustaining notes, and you can use a sustain pedal for that. That's what we can call a wet piano sound. You can hear the ringing. There, the ringing is as important as the notes that you're playing. A dry sound is where you have no sustain, and that's what he's doing with the drummers. There's a real qualitative difference in the texture of the sound between a wet sound and a dry sound. And Chick is using that a lot for contrast. Okay, hopefully that was diggable and useful for you. There's a couple of things that Chick has produced that can give you more information about some of his thought processes. One is a real great keyboard workshop that he did quite a while ago, but it has a lot of great concepts on it. The other one is a book called A Work in Progress on Being a Musician. I recommend both of these things very highly. I'm sure you can get them on Amazon. I want to thank you all again for hanging out with me tonight. I want to thank my great partner, the great Melissa Kelly, for her incredible audio and visual help on these projects. If you like this, there are 21 other master classes which I'm not going to bother telling you about tonight, but you can find them on YouTube and Ustream. If you'd like to reach me with any tomatoes or comments or compliments or criticisms, you may do so anytime at www.davefrankjazz.com. I had a lot of fun tonight, and I'm hoping that you did too. Blessings, and keep swinging from New York City.